Hello everybody and welcome to another Arkham Horror list video. Today I am joined by Eric for a list video I'm actually very excited about. This is 6 tips for new players from a new player. As I told Eric when I pitched them this list video idea, it's time for the learner to become the learnee. So we're going to dive in. Eric, you have 6 tips. I'm actually going to get time codes for this one, I think.
Sick.
Because time codes make the world go round. So, if you don't know, Eric and I have been slowly playing the game together, and Eric has been learning. We've been learning through gameplay. We've also been learning through discussion videos. I share my pittance of knowledge that I have for this game with Eric to try to, help them understand things better and also make content for you guys. And now I decided Eric's played 3 campaigns at the time of recording, but however, Forgotten Age isn't finished, so we can't talk about Forgotten Age spoilers in this one, so we can't talk about that here. But I wanted to know, basically, what would Eric now tell Eric at the start of the Dunwich Legacy? So that was kind of the idea for this video. So Eric, I'm going to throw number 1 to you, and you can dive in and get this show on the road. So number 1 is...
So number 1 was try and have a good power or answer or card for a monster or movement need when flipping scenario cards, good or bad. So this is the first one that comes to mind for me. The number of times in any of the campaigns that we've played, Justin has been like, hold off on flipping that card until you're ready, has really started to reinforce for me just how much agendas and acts can both completely change the situation in a game. And I'm not saying like if you're losing or if you're behind or if you're a certain amount ahead, don't do it. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying be aware that every time a new act or a new agenda occurs, you could very quickly be asked to do something or resolve something that could potentially change your entire game plan. I started holding on, and it's always good to hold on, but deny existence.
Yeah.
I started always trying to have a deny existence anytime we flipped either of these, just to be ready.
Yeah. I think this is great sound knowledge because if you just look at it, I have here all these examples from the core set that it teaches you early on that every agenda and act flip changes the game in some way. And I think just general sound knowledge is to be aware of the fact that the game is going to change. A lot of the times they have limited windows that you can do them in, and even then you can like set up for it for next turn. Like for example, in the barrier here, it's when the round ends it happens, right? But a lot of them also you happen when you want to flip them. And a lot of the times, you can just, like, wait a turn. You don't need to do it immediately. You can just be like, okay, we're going to take a turn. And being prepared for it, I think, is some great sound advice. You don't know what it's going to be on a blind play, right?
No.
But just having a general idea that the game is going to change and ask something from you, I think, is a very good line of thinking.
Well, and the 2 biggest weaknesses I've had, and the reason why I'm specifying monster or movement, is because the 2 hardest ones I've had are something is going to spawn that's going to hunt you.
Yeah.
Those ones are always scary monsters. They're always big dangers. Be prepared to evade. Be prepared to fight. Or it's, you gotta go.
Yeah.
You gotta go somewhere. And it's like either you gotta get away from where you are or you gotta go somewhere. And so if you can plan around that need for movement, I think those are your 2 strongest assets.
Definitely. All right, let's go to number 2, which is a nice simple hint of...
So, I'm sure everyone here who has heard me talk about Magic all the time is going to love this little knowledge drop. This is a book, I think, from 1995 by Baxter called Mastering Magic Cards. This is why I'm still bad at Magic cards, because I own this book. It is the only Magic card guidebook I read. If you think Magic card guides go out of date every couple of months, try only playing games from... and from mindsets from 1995, because that is why I still play mono red and mono black. But in Mastering Magic Cards, it talks about the idea of, as a new player, focusing on really, really simple mechanics and really, really simple combos. Because combos are tricky. Combos in any game, and Arkham 2, are really, really tricky. And you are expected in Arkham to be building combos. You need to combo with your character card. You need to combo with what one card does and how it can reset an item or regain a charge. And there's I've noticed a lot of decks, especially by Justin, that are just like combo upon combo upon combo, and they're super deep and they're super great. But for a new player, figure out what you want to do consistently and then do it that way. If you think about it, if you come from a Magic background, think about it like, what is the main thing your deck does that you have put the majority of your cards into making sure it will hit that? Whether that's card draw, whether that's having cards that are very similar in their effect, that can trigger off very similar effects. Like, Mastering Magic Cards talks a lot about, like, I think it's called pockets and catches, which I don't think is terms used in Magic anymore, but it's the idea that you should be building your deck around groupings that will do the thing you're trying to do, or a close enough approximation that you can still hit your win condition. For me, that's been absolutely true of Arkham. Like, if you're going to do curses, you have to be really willing to go in on curses and have multiple ways to make it happen. If you're going to be fighting, you need to be thinking about what happens if the game takes away my current assets.
Yes, definitely.
What happens if I don't draw my sledgehammer, which I was planning to play entirely around? Do I have something similar that I can also hope to draw? Do not... If it's going to require, in my opinion, for a new player, if it's going to require 3 cards to go off, you're not ready for it. If it's going to require 4 cards to really hit its stride, you probably don't know how to get to those 4 cards. Your deck is very small, but the scenarios really like to mess with you, and getting things into play can be hard. Keeping them in play is hard. Don't plan around more than 2 card combos initially.
I have nothing to add. I think that's 100% great advice. And then as you learn more, you'll be more confident in doing bigger card combos. I think I have nothing to add. This is a great tip. Thank you, current Eric, for past Eric, and also all other new players. All right, let's get... Oh, yeah, you can jump up there, Russ. That's okay. You can go up there. All right, let's go to number 3, which is everyone's favorite hint.
Resources are not smooth. Plan to spike them high when you need them, and don't be afraid to hold back a money card if your game state is comfortable. So I especially learned this, no spoilers, from the last campaign we just finished, but I had multiple points where I was able to contribute financially to various events happening in the game that I needed to spend money on, because I built a deck that was about having the board state I needed and then having replacements if I lost the board state I needed. And because of that, I didn't need to be constantly growing my resources every turn. I didn't need to have a regular income. I needed money when I needed it. I needed cards that would give me that burst of resources so that I could play something and I could get back to doing what I needed to do for the rest of the game. This is not like Magic. You do not need to play a land every turn to remain competitive throughout the game to keep on tabs. It is perfectly valid to spend all your 5 resources getting a decent board state, and then 2 turns later play a resource card and develop your board state a bit more. Like, that is a very functional way to play. You don't need to have a huge amount of resources floating at all times.
Yeah, and this is actually something that's like... We always tell new players to make sure your deck has economy. And economy can be different depending on the deck. Economy, this is a concept that might be a bit hard for newer players to really truly grasp. So it's not something that I'd advise in this video, but sometimes your economy is just a low curve.
Yeah.
Right? That also can be part of your deck's economy. For example, I build a lot of decks that follow a very similar strategy, where I have a 3-cost asset that I look to get into play, and then the remaining cards that I play in my deck are 1 or 2 cost, which means that the 1-cost cards are practically free because I get 1 resource a turn, and the 2-cost cards are very achievable because if I don't play my 1-cost, I'm at 2 suddenly the next turn. This does take practice to get there, to find the right balance, but I think what's also important is to figure out the difference between passive and active economy, right? Or sorry, I'm going to call this passive and active economy. Emergency cash is, in my opinion, passive economy. But that doesn't mean it's bad. But sometimes you could be asking yourself, do I want active economy? Do I want something like Watch This or Burning the Midnight Oil, which are 2 cards that you while progressing the game, get economy on top of it. You get resources on top of it. And I think what's also true is, don't be afraid to hold back a money card. I think that's great advice. And also, don't be afraid to commit a money card if you can commit it and you need to.
Yeah. And and it's not bad to be sitting at 0 resources. Like, if you have a handful of highly expensive cards and you're at 0 resources, something has already gone wrong.
Yeah, play your economy card then.
Yeah.
But if you're at 0 resources and you're looking at 2-cost card in your hand that you don't need to play right now or next turn, wait it out.
Yeah, you don't need to take those actions. Like, it is okay to spike your resources when you need them. Every turn that you're spending building your economy when you don't need to is actions you're not taking doing something else.
100%. However, with all that said, though, I think a big thing is looking ahead on your turns before is a skill that's going to take a lot of time for you in Arkham, but I think is a very crucial skill to talk about. And it's a video that I've been workshopping and building, so hopefully in the near future I'll have this video which is about thinking ahead in Arkham, because a lot of this requires you to think X turns ahead, and that's something that can be a little bit difficult to really grasp. All right, Eric, number 4. You thought number 3 was good. Here's number 4.
Peril cards aren't as tricky as they seem. Think about what sorts of powers the Mythos deck has thrown at you right up until now, then consider your hand and other players' board states. If you can recover fast from a peril event happening, take the heat for yourself. If fellow players aren't going to be heavily affected, share the heat. So this comes because multiple times peril events would happen, and especially in the Dunwich campaign, I was sharing them around and I was very chaotic with them, and it was causing us a lot of harm. Once I started realizing that since I don't know what's in Justin's hand, I need to look at Justin's board state and figure out how the peril card's going to interact with that, it made me go, okay, but as the person with the peril, I have more knowledge than the other player does.
Yeah.
If the other player's in a position of weakness, or they're running off of exactly the assets they have, but it's been skin of the teeth, if it's been really complicated or difficult for them, or they're really trying to top deck into some better cards, do not hit them with the peril. Take the peril on yourself if you can. I think that some of the fear around peril cards is specifically designed to put you mentally on tilt. And if you stay calm, consider the scenario, and take a look at how well you can weather it first, and make that your goal, a peril becomes a treachery card. You were expecting to take the blame and take the heat anyways, so if you can do that even moderately well, you should.
I think this is great advice. I think this is an awesome tip, because it's true. Peril is there when there's a choice, right? Like, that's usually when peril shows up on cards. It shows up in other times, but the whole idea for peril is that you have to make a choice. And as a new player especially, if you're playing with other new players, don't think about it too much, because every peril is probably going to be chosen incorrectly. But I imagine with you as a new player playing with me, and when you had to make a choice, you were like, I don't want to make the wrong one, right? It adds even more dauntingness to it, because like you're like, Justin probably knows exactly what choice to make here. I hope I make the right one. But I think the idea here of just look at you have the most information, so you can make the right decision with what you see of the board state. And you can look at everyone else's board state, take a moment, look at everything, right? And be like, okay, this card says each player takes a damage in a horror or discards an asset. I have an asset I can discard, but my goon only has a weapon. And there's an enemy engaged with them. We're not discarding an asset. It basically just cuts out an option from the card for you.
Exactly.
However, you have an asset that you can discard. Your friend has an empty asset. Let's get rid of it. It's easy, right? Yeah, I think take a second, look at all the board states, and the answer will just like fall on your lap a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
All right. Next one here, number 5. Let's go.
Things with victory points are meant to hurt. If you clear them with with low to no resources, do it. If you are weak or off kilter, don't push for location-based victories beyond getting the clues you need. So, This is really funny because this is almost in opposition to the way that Justin and I have been playing in a lot of our runs, because Justin knows the game really well. Justin knows when to hunt for the experience. Justin is angling to get as much experience as possible. But speaking from a new player, every time I over-focused on a card that had victory points when I wasn't in a good place, it hurt me. It was, in fact, a couple of times me looking back like, oh, this is the cause of a loss for us. This is the cause of a scenario loss for us. If something is worth victory points, it's difficult, in theory. If something is worth victory points, it's going to make you work for it. And if you're not in a position where you can work for it, forfeit the experience to just get ahead. And you can come back. You can come back to a scenario sometimes where you could have gained a victory point and didn't. But in my opinion, like, if something's going to give you, if something has 4 clues on it and it's worth 2 victory and you can get 3 of those clues and then win the scenario, but you're not sure you can get that 4th, it's going to add another turn to the game and you're already losing, you're already having someone nearly at a death state, don't wait for it. Take the win.
So, I agree with this completely. And this is actually something that my viewers, they don't complain about it because they understand that my playstyle is different. But I have a theory that I can win with skill over 1 more victory point, right? Mm-hmm. Just because, like, there's times when I get my objective, you get everything you need solved, and you're like, okay, I can win the scenario. I have 3 turns to maybe go back to this location and get all this victory. But if I die, like, the thing is, it's like push your luck, right? And you're either banking on 1 more VP for the rest of the campaign or a potential trauma for the rest of the campaign. You might have to also be banking the scenario loss conditions versus the scenario win conditions. And while you get more knowledge, this is much easier to balance out. I also believe and agree with, as a new player, sometimes it's better to just win than it is to win perfectly. Right. Yeah. And I think this is not a popular opinion because people love VP. But with all that said, 1 VP, if that makes or breaks your deck for the future, you might just need to think about, like, why do I need that VP so much? Maybe the answer is just because victory points are fun. And I agree. Victory points are fun. But if someone dies because of it, you should also then, as a player, look back and be like, maybe we didn't need that, right? Maybe we did, but maybe we didn't. And I think as a new player, it's easier to just win than it is to try to get the VP, in some cases. Yeah, you'll know when, right? Yeah. Like, this is what Eric's talking about here, right? If you don't have the ability to, it might just be worth it to just win.
If it's going to cost you resources that it's going to make it possible for you to survive later, it's just not worth it. Mm-hmm. Like, I would not burn some of my defensive cards as a mystic to get that 1 extra victory point by somehow surviving what a location or what a monster is going to do to me. Mm-hmm. That's just not worth it. Mm-hmm. The Mythos is going to immediately respond by reshuffling itself in secret and pumping out another creature on top of you and being like, good job.
Yeah. It could happen, but it also, like, that's the thing, like, that's why it's push your luck, because it also might just work out, right? It might just be totally fine. You might get the exact token you need. But I think as a new player, it's easier to just, because you're going to know less about what to expect, it's easier to just not go for it. At this point now in my Arkham career, I can pretty much, like, know when to push and when not to. But when you're a new player, it's easier to just not push. Just go for it. Just, like, have win the scenario or leave that location behind to progress the scenario. All right. Last one here, number 6, to close out the video, we have...
In my opinion, health or sanity at 4 or less is in the danger zone. This doesn't mean that you have to slow down. Vid.
The worst thing is when I got to this slide, I said, I'm going to check to make sure I got no spelling errors on any of the previous slides. And then I got one on this one.
Justin just covering for me having written vid, and Justin just trusted me.
I typed it out. I didn't copy paste. It's on me. It's on me.
Yeah. So when I say the danger zone, what I don't mean is slow down. I actually mean the exact opposite. When you are at health or sanity 4 or less, you need to take less risks, but you need to start pushing the victory state, because it's only going to take one monster and one treachery card to kill you in rapid succession, and the game is very good at putting one monster and one treachery card on you, or one monster and one treacherous location on you. Like, what I have discovered in this game is that getting dealt 2 to 3 damage isn't unreasonable. That's a pretty average amount of damage for you to receive. But then having a treachery, or having another creature ping you, or having a location deal you 1 damage is often just enough to push you over into a death state. Mm-hmm. So when I call it the danger zone, what I mean is relating back to that victory points thing that I was mentioning before. When you're down to 4 or less health or sanity, you no longer have the flexibility to make as many mistakes as you did in the past, doing wasted actions, doing wasted turns, or pushing secondary objectives. If you're going to go save an NPC or win the scenario and you are at 4 or less health or 4 or less sanity, probably best just to win the scenario. If you have to explore 2 more locations and you're at 4 or less health or sanity, it's good to just get in there, explore those places, get those clues, and try to get out as fast as possible. You are now at the state, for me, in the game where everything the Mythos deck gets to do, everything that the acts or scenarios get to do, are going to potentially kill you. So you want to limit the number of turns the game has to hurt you anymore, because you're now on a clock, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. And I think with this, I think just as you play more Arkham, the danger zone just becomes smaller, right? I think that's a very natural thing. And you right now, for your game, it's 4. For me, it's 1. But but I mean, like, I think that's very natural, right? Because if you asked me like 3 years ago, I probably would have said 2. Right?
Yeah.
But now I'm like, no, I'm not dead till I'm dead. But I do think that this is actually very important, that you as a player need to define what your danger zone is, and when you start like being like, okay, I need to close out the scenario. And the victory state is exactly that. How can I win as quickly as possible, right? And as efficiently as possible, and just figure out what that number is for you. And like in time, it's going to get smaller, because as you're going to learn more, you're going to learn your deck more, you're going to like know what's coming more. It becomes easier to like work with this. But I think it's very important to have this number in your head of when you're like, okay, so this is when I start going. But I think what's also important is at the end of the scenario, when you're all done, see how deep you actually have gotten past your danger zone, right? Because if you're still at your danger zone, that could be telling you, my danger zone's too early, I can take more time, right? But I think having this danger zone that Eric's talking about, I think is really key for a new player.
And I love the scenarios. I love all the stuff you can explore. I love how saving certain people changes the game down the road.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just too much risk to try and get all those secondary objectives. And sometimes the whole team just needs to tighten up and make it through before your Seeker dies.
And I mean, I think the best stuff in Arkham is designed to have it be that you can't get everything.
Yeah.
If you can get everything, your decks are too good, or you're playing on too easy of a difficulty. And I think that's just how it is. You don't want to get everything every time. Thank you, Eric, for that insight. It was very fun for me, and I agree with all of your points. I think all of them are really sound advice for new players, which makes sense because you are a new player. I hope you all enjoyed this watching at home. If you want to support and see more Arkham, the best way to do it is by liking, commenting, subscribing to our YouTube channel, or if you want to go a step further, you can join all of these patrons down below on our Patreon channel for as low as $3 American a month. That means I get like $3.75 Canadian. That's practically $1 million down here. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good one. And as always, GG's.